Welcome to Mindful Musings with the Mind Hub. Given the current ever-changing landscape, understanding and focusing on mental well-being has never been so important. In our latest interview series, we wanted to take some time out and chat with inspirational people about their experiences of mental health because, simply put, there is no health without mental health. Okay, so welcome to the first of many Mindful Musings with myself, Trisha Wilkie. And today I'm going to be chatting about all things men's mental health with Andy Pike of Pike Performance. But before we go forward, I just want to give everyone a little bit of a trigger warning because we will be referencing the words depression and suicide as we go through our chat today. But without further ado, welcome to Andy. Andy, thanks so much for coming in and chatting with me today. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Honestly, I'm really excited to talk about this because I think so many men don't talk about it. We put our head in the sands, and yeah, absolutely pleasure to get stuck into this. So thank you.
Oh, that's brilliant. So Andy, please just tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Yeah, so I've been a personal trainer for about 12 years now. I'm an online coach. I help parents optimize their time, health, and family by debunking a lot of myths around nutrition and just really empowering them to feel that they can actually make a significant change to themselves, but most importantly, their family as well. So that's me in a nutshell. But I think there's so much more to say, but I would say that's me. That's me in the last 12 years.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And I know that you're really passionate as well about mental health, and that you really see, that link between our physical health and our mental health, that you really get that, and like you say, there's so much more that you could say, but people can find out more about you and how to get in contact with you and everything more at the end of this chat. And I know you're going to leave us with some great tips too. So, in the spirit of just talking about mental health and normalizing it, so I'm going to just ask you, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I would say there is always ups and downs, right? I feel okay today. I feel like when I go for a walk, I just feel reset. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I can say to anyone already is when you do feel a bit overwhelmed, and I do in the morning, I have lots of questions in the morning. And I think, you know what, just write it down. And instantly it's like a switch. It deloads information. So right now I'm feeling a lot better.
It's great, isn't it? And I think that really just shows you that, our moods are ever changing, that sometimes they feel permanent, but actually there is an impermanence to everything. And there are things that we can do to bring a shift in that mood, and things that we can do to support ourselves. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that today. Yeah, I'm also feeling all right today. Actually, I just had a really long, busy weekend, which was lots of fun. But for me, I feel quite on edge if I don't get enough sleep. And this weekend there wasn't a great deal of sleep because there was lots of fun going on. But yeah, last night I was crashed out by 10 to 9 and didn't wake up till about 6:30. So I'm feeling good, yeah, which is good. But for me, it's having that walk first thing in the morning with the dog as well, really helps me to set myself up for the day. So, we know that mental health is a really important topic. We know that it's something that we should be mindful of every moment of our day, not just on awareness days, awareness campaigns. But I think these awareness days and campaigns like Movember, and we've got International Men's Day coming up, I believe, on the 19th, provide great opportunities to highlight and talk about these things. And I think talking about men's mental health is really important because sadly the stats can make some fairly grim reading for our men, and I've certainly felt inspired this month to really talk about men's mental health. My focus is on that. And I just wanted to kind of get in and have a chat with a guy, and his guy's perspective about men's mental health and perhaps what are some of these barriers, because when I'm teaching mental health first aid, when we come to the section around depression and suicide, some of the stats are really quite heavy around men's mental health. You know, we know that women actually are more likely, twice as likely than men, to experience depression. Yeah, women are more susceptible to these mood disorders, and depression can lead to suicidal behaviours. But men, even though they are, you know, not as likely to, you know, become ill with depression, actually they're 3 times more likely to die by suicide than women. And so that doesn't really, doesn't stack up. There's something going on, you know, and our men most at risk are those in the 40 to 49 age bracket. And, you know, it is so complex, you know, that we're not going to be able to unpick it all and find all the answers in our chat. But clearly there's something going wrong, you know. Lots of men are slipping through the net. You know, if women are twice more likely to experience depression, but men are 3 times more likely to reach crisis point and die by suicide, then, you know, what's going on? This is something that I often ponder about, in particular every time I deliver that session. I come away thinking, what could we do? What could I do? And often we sit, don't we, and we think, well, you know, what change could I make? It's just me. But I always think collectively, you know, if we all did a little something, then together we can bring about change. And for me, I think perhaps what I can do is begin to talk about it more, you know, getting, you know, talk to, you know, the men in my family, all my friends, you know, and just ask them all, you know, how are you doing, you know, and check in with people more and normalize it perhaps. But, you know, I wonder, you know, being a guy yourself, you know, I'm female, so I'm always going to have that female bias, and I'd love to just get into a guy's mind and find out, you know, well, why, what's going on, you know. Clearly more needs to be done, whether that's getting people to talk about it more, you know. Is it that men just don't have the same kind of awareness perhaps of how they're feeling, to even know perhaps that they're unwell? You know, what are some of these barriers that are preventing men from coming forward and seeking help? I guess perhaps stigma has, you know, got a big part to play in that too. But yeah, I just wondered, you know, what are your thoughts? So, you know, from your perspective, what do you think some of these potential blocks might be? What do you feel could be a smart move forward perhaps to bring about change? So I know that's quite a big question and that's a lot to throw at you.
There is.
but yeah, you know, what are your thoughts, Andy?
I think the biggest first kind of focus is, for men, there is an element of pride. I think that's the first thing, where you've kind of, depending on how you've been brought up to be the man, to focus on being that kind of the rock. And when you feel that, oh, I'm really struggling, it's going to be quite hard to identify that or kind of say I need help. And the people that I'm around in terms of mentorship with business, all the lads, all the guys that you can see when everyone's struggling, they become silent. There's going to be less communication.
Yeah.
And I think when you're saying about men are 3 times likely to commit suicide, I think a lot of that comes down to a lot of communication of, yes, there might be that statistic, but how many of that is, how many of them actually have reached out before and I need help? Whereas I think for women, I say I've coached a lot of mums, and it's easy for a mum to just reach out, I need help. Whereas for a guy, it's a little bit more challenging. They put their head in the sand, and countless times I've done it before. And I think that's the biggest part of it, of acknowledging that, you know what, I need help from other people. So from a guy's perspective, when it comes to your own mental health, I think it's very easy to just try and do it yourself. And from everything that I've experienced in the past, so let's say, for instance, when I was around 15, 16, or actually probably 16, 17, my mum became ill, and she became having anxiety. She was locked in the house. She didn't want to go anywhere. She actually then ended up being sectioned. Mm-hmm. So in the period of time of my life of being 16, of this very influential age of needing support, it was very hard to kind of process all of this. So when I came to probably the age of 18, 19, I actually went to therapy. having someone, actually talking to someone, processing all of it. And it wasn't just that one time, it was 2 or 3 times after that for different reasons, but it actually allowed me to really process and acknowledge so many things in the past that had actually affected me. So I think when it comes to mental health with men, I think the hardest part is going to be actually acknowledging and saying, I'm actually struggling. Because even friends, it's so ingrained, depending if it's a generational thing, but it's so ingrained to be quiet about it and it can not acknowledge that I'm really struggling. And I think that's now where people are actually getting more comfortable actually saying, I actually need a bit of therapy. I actually need to talk to someone, even if it's just having a conversation with a friend. So I think from my perspective of having that kind of trauma in my life, it's kind of shaped me into the person now that I'm always going to have my off days and really struggle with actually communication. And my wife being having patience of a saint, it is challenging. And I think this is where it's really identifying, and just talking like this now is even helping me and hopefully helping other people acknowledge that it is hard. It is really hard to just say, oh, I'm really struggling here. But I think the biggest thing that was the biggest turning point for me was to reach out, even if I felt vulnerable. Being vulnerable was an element of growth, and acknowledging that, oh, you know what, I can actually get so much from this person. The times that I've had therapy, going into it and just thinking I'm never going to have anything or get anything out, which was actually the best times, because I was actually more relaxed and open to actually understand my emotions. So I think, long story short, around all of what I've just said, for a guy to acknowledge that around their mental health is probably one of the hardest things to do, because there's an element of pride, and that's solely my opinion. And having that ego, take the ego and just put it in the bin, because everyone's struggling. And I think if people are saying that they are not struggling, it's like, well, we're all struggling to some degree. It's just depending on how much. And if that piles on and adds up, like the analogy of putting water in a cup, it's going to spill. So if we can just take chunks out of each day, then we'll feel a lot better.
Yeah, God, there's so much there, Andy. And I'm thinking, wow, I wish we had like a whole day to chat about this stuff, because there's so many. My mind is going, oh yeah, there's so much we could talk about there, and yeah, that's great. Oh, vulnerability, there's so much we could talk about there. But yeah, you're so right. I think it's that pride, isn't it? You know, there's lots of stigmatizing views and beliefs around women and how they should be, and you know, how they should act and what they should wear and all these kind of things. But there are for men too that can be well, clearly it's damaging, because you know, we're looking at these grim stats, and like you say, everyone struggles, because that is part of being human. Yeah, that is part of being human. Everyone struggles. We all suffer to some degree. But we can come through, and like you say, you know, you've experienced that at quite a young age. You had a lot to deal with at a young age, but actually how that set you up in your adult life, you know, you come through with great resilience, and we are resilient human beings. We can come through, but at the time, sometimes in times of darkness and need, it doesn't feel like we can, but we all can come through. But sometimes we just need that little bit of support to help us to realize that. But yeah, this stigma, you know, that men, you know, should be the breadwinners, they should be strong, they should just be able to pull themselves together and get on with it. You know, our men folk are wonderful, but they're not superhuman. None of us are, and that we all need a little bit of support. And you touched on vulnerability. You know, a lot of people think it's a weakness, to say that you need help. But you're right, it is a real strength. Dr. Brené Brown talks about this a lot. She's done lots of research around vulnerability, you know, in leadership as well. Now there's a lot of a buzz about leading with vulnerability too, because it's a real strength to say, hey, you know, I need a little bit of support, I need a little bit of help with this. But by doing that, you know, you take ownership, and you come through the other side with more wisdom, and more strength. And actually, you know, being able, as you've just done, shown a little bit of yourself, shown a little bit of when you were vulnerable, really helps people to come then forward and talk about themselves. So I really believe that this is one way that maybe we can bring about a bit of change, is just to, you know, be more honest about ourselves. Yeah, and you know, talk about our vulnerabilities a little bit more, and then your you know, your mate or your colleague or whatever might feel more able, well, she's obviously okay talking about this stuff, you know, or I think he'll understand actually if I go and chat to him. So, you know, it might lead to more people to open up. So I really do believe that talking about mental health does help to normalize it, and us showing our vulnerabilities a bit more. And also perhaps, you know, when we hear someone talking in a derogatory way, a negative way about mental health, that perhaps we gently challenge some of that too. Yeah. And that stigma is so damaging. You know, for me, it was self-stigma that really, you know, made me so much worse, and got me to a point where I had no option then to kind of reach out for help. But, you know, me believing that I was weak, I wouldn't get through all of these kind of things, it's really not helpful. So thanks for sharing that, Andy. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I'm sure that you will have inspired, you know, someone to just think about perhaps their own mental health a bit more and reach out. And I do think it's really helpful. People like Freddie Flintoff and Stephen Fry. There's a few other people, I'm trying to remember their names right now, who've come forward and done documentaries, you know, about their struggles with mental health too. I think that helps, don't you? You know, the more high profile people we can get to come forward as well really helps.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, let's say with celebrities and high end profile, let's say sports people as well, I think it's appreciating that if they can do it, then why can't we? And
Yeah.
I think because we put them on a pedestal of oh my God, they're amazing, they're superhuman. If they're struggling, then it really kind of identifies, and it's breaking the mold of a person of that. That's my role model. Wow, they're struggling as well. And it's giving that ability to be like, if you can be impressionable to the people that are inspired by you, then fingers crossed that will actually have a positive and knock-on effect on them, to be like, I'm going to break the mold of, oh, I'm not speaking about my mental health.
Yeah.
It's, I can speak about this because of my role models are actually talking about it as well.
Yeah, I love that. And what do you think, Andy? So I always try and, you know, think positively about stuff. And I do support a couple of organisations with some external mental health first aid, like on a one-to-one basis. And I have to say, I do notice the difference between when I'm supporting an older person and when I'm speaking with a much younger person. Obviously, I'm in the older camp and you're in the much younger camp. But I can definitely see a difference. So when I'm supporting people who are probably, you know, in their 20s, maybe in their early 30s, they are much more open to talking about how they're feeling, and also much more open about accessing the help that I'm kind of signposting them towards. And I feel more of a pushback when I'm talking to guys who are in that sort of early 40s and above bracket, which is a bit of a worry. So it's positive on one note, that I do feel that there is a bit of a shift and a change in mindset in the younger generation, but worryingly in that the age bracket that the most at risk, that there is still this resistance. But as being a young guy yourself, do you feel that as well with, you know, perhaps your friends or, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of this is, it really comes down to, let's say, the education around it. I think because of, depending on a generational thing, because now people are more available in terms of, we have more access to the internet, we have access to so many things, whereas that generation around the 40-50 mark, around that area, there was a huge transition and they didn't have that, and there was all about just put it in a box and move on and get on with it. And I think because of that, and that all really ties in as well down to nutrition and exercise, there's such a big shift, and all of them have a huge connection together. And I truly believe that if we can break that chain, break that cycle, and really acknowledge that, yeah, it's okay to have a conversation, like the people I've trained even who are in that bracket, you can see the complete difference of acknowledging what they need to do and what they can't do, or what they can do. And yeah, I really do believe that yeah, you've hit the nail on the head that a lot of people in that age bracket are reluctant because they feel it's a weakness.
Yeah. So hopefully, you know, the things that have been done, more information available, more education,
Yeah.
talking about it more is really helpful. So hopefully our younger generations coming through will have more awareness and skills to manage their mental health. But clearly we need to, you know, we mustn't stop. You know, the mission continues every day to try and bring about change for everybody. So you touched on there, you know, how nutrition and exercise really feeds into our mental health. And this is something that people don't often realize, you know, and I talk about this a lot. There is no health without mental health. Our physical health, our mental health is intrinsically linked. We are a holistic whole person. And a healthy body, healthy mind. There's many things that we can do to help protect our mental health and to mitigate against the risk for poor mental health. And I know that you're really passionate about this. You get this is your work. So I wonder, you know, what are perhaps some of your top tips for maintaining positive mental well-being?
I think I could probably talk about 5 hours worth of this.
Well,
So
yeah.
there is a lot, but I think the first thing we have to really appreciate is there are blue zones in the world. This is where people live over 100 years old, and the variety of diets vary. And this is where there's no such thing as a perfect diet. But also we have to appreciate the people that were living longer were having a community of people. They had an abundance of, let's say, local food, a community, a support network. And I think that's the biggest thing that I think is so important, is having a connection, having a support network in there. But on a daily basis, I think the biggest tips for someone starting out around this, and maybe like when I say a weakness towards mental health, it's acknowledging it's okay to have a weakness around mental health because it is something you haven't trained, and it's making sure now it's becoming a strength. So things like the top 3 is journaling, sleeping, and exercising. 3 things that I think if you can knuckle down those three areas, your ability to be more open and more reflective is so important. So journaling, like writing a to-do list, it's so easy. I know the fact that if I don't journal, that meaning I'm not going to be like Dear Diary. I'm writing down what my tasks are, who I'm grateful for, what lessons have I achieved. So if I don't do that, I know that I'm going to be all over the shop. So number 1 would be journaling. Now sleep, we all know that if we don't get enough sleep, we feel horrendous, right? And the average adult needs around 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And we all know that as potentially even as a parent, that's very hard and very challenging to do, depending on what the stage of the children are at. But even for people that are not parents, it's so easy now to look at your phone, forget about it, and then lo and behold, you're looking at your phone for an hour, and then you've had a interrupted sleep, and it's struggling with that. And I think if we can focus on 7 to 9 hours of sleep, allow ourselves to probably not have coffee before we go to bed, probably the bonus would be a really good one, because we know that heightened anxiety around caffeine is not great. If you're feeling stressed already, introducing a stimulant is not going to be great. And then lastly, exercise to get those endorphins flowing. We know that exercise has a huge positive impact on someone's mental health. I know every single client that I have trained over the years having said exactly, I know what, I've really struggled to train, but when I do it and finish it, I feel amazing. So it's getting past that. But if someone can master those 3, even if it means just writing a to-do list, first of all, is their journaling, so they can just declutter their head, then they can actually get a really good sleep routine, and then they can exercise, whether it's walking, going to the gym, whatever it is. If they can do those 3 things now for the next 7 days, they will dramatically transform their whole understanding of themselves.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks. There's some really great tips there. And I was just thinking as you were talking, you know, sometimes, you know, men may have difficulty in the beginning talking about how they're feeling, but we know that talking about how we're feeling really helps to rationalize, process everything that's going on in the mind. So if at the moment it feels a bit uneasy to talk in that way, writing your thoughts down, journaling is a great way to get those thoughts out of your head, where you can see your thoughts more objectively. You might be able to think about them with a bit more clarity, or just to physically get them out of your head. So I love that. I think that's a great top tip, particularly for our men. And you're right, you de-junk, get rid of all that stuff out of your mind, jot it down onto a journal. That means that your head's a little bit more rested to be able to sleep. Exercise helps to burn off some of that excess energy and adrenaline. We know a walk in the morning, that's why I do it, get that daylight hitting the back of your eyes, so it kicks off your internal body clock. And actually doing that in the morning sets you up for a good sleep at night too, doesn't it? So I love that. Journaling, sleep and movement. And I always like to call it movement, because some people go, oh, exercise, I don't want to,
Yeah.
I've got to do a HIIT session. But it could be just jumping around in the kitchen to a loud piece of music, or going for a stomp round the block, or whatever that might be. It's just movement, isn't it? So I love that.
Love that. Yeah, completely.
Oh, thanks, Andy. Thanks. They're really great tips. So we're almost coming to the end now of our conversation, and I always like to end on a bit of a fun, positive note. So can you just tell us all one thing that you're watching right now, one thing that maybe you're looking forward to, and something that you're grateful for today?
So the first one is, I think the wife has influenced this, but I think we're currently watching Made in Chelsea, or one of those parts. I'm kind of, but it's enjoyable, right? It is enjoyable. I put my hands up to it. Is sometimes I think, oh, there is some better things, but that is what we're currently watching. Very drama, love it, but at the same time, yeah, there are other things.
Yeah. You're smiling too much there. You've just blamed the wife.
I think it's a guilty pleasure, but at the same time, I do enjoy the things. But no, we haven't gone into any kind of big series. We've just come out of a few, but straight into that at the moment. What am I looking forward to? I think I'm really excited to see what 2022 has for us. I think because we've come out of lockdown and we're kind of going into the new norm now, it's really quite interesting in how I see people changing in terms of their exercise, their habits. That for me is really exciting to see. And I think it's going to be a very interesting year. Needless to say, the 2021 is still here. I'm really intrigued to see how the change of, even in the fitness industry, has dramatically changed. It's been very inspiring to see that a lot of people have gone online, including myself, and seeing where that goes in 2022. So I think that's going to be a really exciting thing going forward. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. And then what am I grateful for? I'm grateful for my wife. She's very, very patient with me, I think, every day. So every day I literally even write up my journal saying I'm grateful for a loving wife every day because of that. So that's me.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Andy. And actually, you just made me think that comes back to what you were saying about community, having support. So having someone there who supports you every day is wonderful, and certainly something to be grateful for. Okay, so listen, you're amazing. I know you're amazing at what you do. You help so many people, bring about change, a positive change for mental and physical health. So if anyone listening, watching this today is interested and wants to get in touch with you to see how you might be able to help them, how can they do that, Andy?
Yeah, so the best place is going to be Instagram and Facebook. So you've got Instagram, which is pike.performance, and then you've got Facebook, which is pikeperformance.co.uk. If you search those two, in even just Pike Performance in both of them, you'll be able to find me. And yeah, we talk about all things exercise, nutrition, and mental health as well. So that would be the best place to just look at my stories, get educated on a daily basis, and just immerse yourself with so much content that I'm actually putting out for free. So
amazing. Oh, thanks, Andy. Well, listen, thanks for your insight and your honesty today. And I really do hope that our little chat has maybe inspired someone to perhaps reach out themselves, or, go and just check in, with, their friend, their partner, their dad, their uncle, their brother, or whatever, and just to ask them, how they're doing today. So if you're watching this and you're someone who is in need of some support, please don't delay. Reach out to your crisis team if you have one, a friend, a GP. If you have an employee assistance program at work, please utilize those. They're notoriously underutilized, but there's so much help that you can get from those. So if you have one, do get in touch. There's lots of great external organizations as well, all just waiting to take your call. People like the Samaritans, which you can contact on 116 123 any time of day or night. If you prefer to text, you can text the word shout to 85258 and you will get a text back from a trained counsellor on the phone. Or there's a great website. It's the calmzone.net website, which is the Campaign Against Living Miserably website. Now you can get on that website, which is calmzone.net, or thecalmzone.net, sorry. And there there's a helpline, or you can talk to someone via web chat too. So, don't delay, please reach out. Okay, that concludes our session. Thanks so much, Andy. And yeah, great to chat to you today.
Been a pleasure.
Please look out for and tune into the next Mindful Musings podcast. In the meantime, if you would like to know more about how the Mind Hub can support your wellbeing strategy with mental health training or mindful-based workshops, please get in touch at www.themindhub.co.uk.